In this video we look at tactical guidelines for German panzer crews in the Second World War based on a book from 1940. It basically deals with how to act correctly based on do's and don'ts in certain situations. For instance, how to best engage different weapons like machine guns or anti-tank guns. Note, these instructions are mostly for a single tank. For tactics for a platoon of 5 tanks, check out my previous video. The first example is about engaging an enemy machine gun that is about 25 meters to the side of the tank. It is noted that to just fire at it with the tank machine guns is not entirely wrong. Instead, the correct approach is to engage the enemy crew with fire and roll over the machine gun to completely destroy it. This directly leads to the next example, which accounts for the fact that tanks would usually fight together with other tanks. Here the machine gun is further away from the first tank, but in front of a friendly tank. In this case, it would be wrong to drive over the machine gun. Instead, only suppression should be conducted while the other tank rolls over the enemy machine gun. The next part is about engaging small targets like machine guns at longer ranges, like 300 meters. It is wrong to fire on the move because this would be considered a waste of ammo. Instead, it is noted that it's better to fire while being stopped or to move even closer. Note that German regulations generally noted that engaging enemy targets should be done while being stopped. Although there were certain exceptions noted in the manuals, when engaging a target on the move was considered to be valid. A regulation for the Panzer I noted the following exceptions. Firing from the moving tank is conducted if the distance and roadway promise sufficient effectiveness, if success can be achieved through speed in combination with weapon effect, if the enemy's fire effect on the tank is to be made more difficult by rapid movements. This is similar to Red Army doctrine from 1944. When firing from a tank, the following methods of firing are used. Fire on the move, used for suppressing the personnel and gun emplacements. Fire from short halts, used against all targets. Stops are made with a duration of 4 to 8 seconds to fire one shot from a cannon or several bursts from a machine gun. Places for short halts are chosen behind cover or a mask. Fire from stops, used to fire from behind cover or a mask. A tank moving at combat speed, approaching a cover or a defilade, stops for 30 to 45 seconds to hit the target with 3 or 4 cannon shots. Stationary fire, the most effective type of tank fire, used mainly in defense and from ambushes. If you're interested in German or Soviet tank tactics, you can learn more from these books from our publishing house. The first is an English translation with the original German text of the German Medium Panzer Company regulation from 1941. The other one is an English translation of the Red Army's regulation for the single tank, platoon and company from 1944. We also have other books as well. For a full catalog, check out militaryhistorygroup.com. Be sure to check it out. Now if you're done with the book selection, the next lesson is about target selection. Here the tank is faced with a group of riflemen and the machine gun. It is noted it would be wrong to attack the wider but less important target, namely the rifleman. Instead, the more dangerous, although smaller target, the machine gun, should be destroyed. Needless to say, the target selection is relative. Later on in the book there's an example where the tank faces machine guns and anti-tank guns. Here the anti-tank gun is the primary target. In the next lesson we face a similar tactical situation, although this time our tank has been immobilized. The first image shows the crew leaving the tank after being immobilized and they get cut down by enemy machine gun fire. The correct conduct is to stay in the tank and engage the enemy targets as long as possible. Keep in mind this is in early war, so general regular infantry had very limited anti-tank capabilities. At the same time the tanks were very weakly armored as well. The instructions for the Panzer I note the following about when it is allowed to leave the tank. The crew may abandon an immobilized tank only when it has used up all the ammo or are unable to fire and when recovery by other vehicles is not expected. The next situation is similar. This time a friendly immobilized tank is engaged by enemy infantry and closing in. Here it would be wrong for a nearby tank to continue its advance. Instead it should only conduct its advance after it successfully dealt with the enemy infantry threatening the immobilized tank. Another situation is when there's an enemy machine gun positioned in a shell crater. Here it would be wrong to just drive by and ignore it. Instead it is noted that the tank should drive over the shell crater and destroy it by turning on it. The next situation deals with our tank being in a wooded area and an enemy infantry column moving along a road at the range of about 300 meters. Here it would be wrong to fire on the move, since the effectiveness of the fire would be too low. Instead, the tank should fire from a halt, and only after the enemy infantry got into full cover, the tank should drive closer. Here we also have some additional information from the Panzer I manual. When firing from a moving tank, a constant succession of well-aimed bursts of fire should be attempted in order to have a great effect on the target at the brief moment when the line of sight is on the target. The firefight is conducted by alternating between firing while stationary and while moving. Since firing from a moving tank has less chance of success, the aim should be to fire from a stationary position while making appropriate use of the terrain. The following example is very similar to the first example, namely about properly engaging important targets. Here the target is an enemy observation post. It is stated that just using the machine gun fire would be wrong. Instead, it is recommended to use both firepower and rolling power, Walzkraft, to destroy enemy devices like scissors telescopes and radios. Furthermore, the area should be searched well to make sure all valuable targets are identified and destroyed. The next situation is about our tank being between two small elevations. The wrong approach is just to use them as cover and drive by. Instead, it is noted that it is important to check the areas behind the elevations for heavy enemy weapons like machine guns. About encountering and engaging anti-tank guns, it is noted that in this case firing at the gun frontally is a better approach. Instead, one should accelerate to a maximum speed while going diagonally towards the gun, which should limit the ability of the gun crew to take proper aim. Meanwhile, a flanked anti-tank gun at a distance of about 400 meters should not be engaged while driving, since the fire would be mostly ineffective. Instead, the tank should get into a proper firing position, ideally covered or at least hidden by the terrain and/or flora, and then suppress the enemy gun crew. The next lesson about anti-tank guns is about guns that don't fire anymore and are or at least seem abandoned. It is noted that just bypassing a gun that is not firing is to be avoided, since the crew could be just hiding and waiting to re-engage once the tank has passed. As such, it is recommended to drive over the gun carriage to make the gun unusable. The final lesson about dealing with anti-tank guns is about a gun that is being brought into position at a longer distance. Here it is stated that attacking the larger but harmless target, namely the towing vehicle, is a bad idea, since that would provide the gun crew with time to get ready and in position to engage the tank. Instead, it is recommended to immediately engage the anti-tank gun. The ultimate lesson is about encountering an enemy tank. In this situation, it is assumed that both tanks are moving. Here again, it is stated that engaging the enemy tank while moving is not recommended. Instead, one should immediately move into a firing position and stop to engage the enemy tank with armor-piercing ammunition. In the Panzer I manual is a complete paragraph about how the driver can support firing on the move if that should be necessary. To quote, "The tank driver can significantly support the firing performance, even the possibility of firing at all, and even more so the accuracy of the shot, depends on the driver's skill. Obstacles that make firing impossible are reported to the tank commander by shouting 'attention'. He ensures that the tank is in a steady position when firing by avoiding all jerky movements caused by steering, shifting gears, braking and accelerating at a steady speed. To steer, he uses the pauses between the individual bursts of fire and during a magazine change. The tank commander," note in the Panzer I the commander was also the gunner, "therefore announces the magazine change by shouting 'magazine change'. Jerky switching gears is disruptive and costs time." Note that this paragraph was reprinted with slight changes in the manual for the Panzer III from July 1940 as well. To summarize, these examples clearly illustrate the importance of target selection, the limitations of firing on the move. Additionally, they provide various guidelines and their exceptions, for instance that a machine gun ideally should be driven over, but not if it's a target for another tank. This seems to be obvious, yet I suspect that these lessons are based on experience, and in combat, particularly in a tank, visibility as such battlefield awareness is limited, especially if you're engaged by enemy fire as well. Big thank you to my Patreon and subscriber supporters, thanks to Andrew for reviewing the script, see you next time.